Hello everyone, I am Dr. Anupam here, and today we will discuss how the electricity or the impulse inside the heart is generated and how they are represented or manifested on the ECG paper in the form of different waves. Let us discuss. So before discussing on that, we have to clear some very basic concept of physics. Whenever a vector travels in the direction in which the ECG leads are placed, it will have a positive deflection. If it travels opposite to the lead that is placed, it will have a negative deflection. If it travels either perpendicular in both the direction, the ECG lead, so electrode will have a, which is called equiphagic. So this will be called equiphagic. Away from the lead, negative deflection. Towards the lead, it is positive deflection. Right. So then, what are the conducting system of heart? The parts of conducting system of heart. What are the parts? Number one is SA node. Number two, AV node. Number three, bundle of His. Number four, purkinje fibres. And also the electricity travels in the same direction, right? So let us discuss how it actually is produced inside the heart and how it is manifested on the ECG paper. So let us draw a pictorial diagram of heart, very simple diagram, right? So this is the right side of the body, this is the left side of the body, and we will observe the heart from the lead 2. If you remember from our first class, lead 2 is one of the bipolar limb leads for which the positive electrode lies in the left leg and negative electrode lies in the right arm, right? So from this lead 2 perspective, we will see how the impulse is generated inside the heart, right? So we have SA node, we have AV node, then we have bundle of His, then we have purkinje fibres, right? So this is SA node, this is AV node, this is bundle of His, and this is purkinje fibres. So number one, the impulse will be generated in the SA node, right? So from the SA node, the impulse will travel to AV node, right? So because lead 2 is looking at the heart from the down, if you can see, the vectors are directed towards lead 2. So what that will do, that will create a positive deflection in the lead 2, like this. So this is called P wave. So P wave is wave of atrial depolarization, right? Then what happens? In the AV node, the impulse stays for some times, and because the intrinsic property of the AV node is to slow down the impulse that is generated in the SA node, so there will be some delay in the conduction. So what will happen in the lead 2, if you see, after the PU generated, there is a gap, that is called PR interval. What is the PR interval? This is the conduction delay. After that, what happens? Here the conduction delay happened, static. Then the bundle of his get energized. So what will happen in the bundle of his? First, the septum will depolarize from left to right. This is the left side. So from the left to right, it will depolarize. So the resultant wave, if you can see, is going away from the lead 2. So in the lead 2, if you see the vector, there will be negative deflection. There is a P wave, pure interval, there is a negative deflection. This negative deflection is called Q wave. This is not the pathological Q wave, this is a normal Q wave that is produced due to septal depolarization. So what is a Q wave? Q wave of septal depolarization. Right. Then number 4, once the septum is depolarized, then it is time for the right ventricle and the left ventricle to depolarize. As all of you know, the left ventricle has to contract against a more pressure, much more pressure than the right ventricle, because the right ventricle has to contract against the pulmonary system, which is a low pressure system than the systemic pressure. So the left ventricle has to create a higher amount of force than the right ventricle. So when the RV and LV are contracting or depolarizing, there will be production of waveform. But because LV is larger and thicker in size, we will have a thicker or bigger vector here, right, than the left ventricle. So that is the reason why the resultant wave will be directed towards the lead 2, if you can see here. So it will produce a positive deflection. So in this waveform we will see P wave, PR interval, Q wave. Then there will be a positive deflection, that is the R wave. And this R wave is due to ventricular depolarization, right? And it is in the direction of the left ventricle. That is also called the axis of the heart, right? And once the apex of both RV and LV are depolarized, it's now time for the base to be depolarized, right? And if you can see, it is going away from the lead 2. So then the next wave will be P wave, pair interval, Q wave, R wave. There will be AS wave. It's going away, so there will be negative deflection. It's called the AS wave. So what is the AS wave? AS will signify complete depolarization, right? Now number 6. Now is time when the ventricle is depolarized, it has to be repolarized for the next cardiac cycle to start. So that is called the T wave. P Q R S is a T wave. So T wave is the ventricular repolarization. So if you take a cross section of the heart here, from here if you take a cross section and draw it here, right? So depolarization, the membranes are like this, the negative are inside and positives are outside. So during depolarization, the waveforms are like this. So the resultant waveform is towards lead 2. So it produces a R wave or ventricular depolarization, right? But what happens during repolarization? So during this is depolarization, So what happened during repolarization? So repolarization means, now what happens? The ventricular electricity or the signal, it changes its direction like this. Now it's going from outside to inward. But at the same time, because it's repolarization, the charges also changes its polarity. Right. So now it become like this. Inside become positive and outside become negative. Right. So we have lead 2 here. So from lead 2, if you see, ideally the 2 wave, this is the wave of repolarization, should be going away. According to this should be 2 wave. But in our ECG, we see 2 wave is always a upright wave. How it is possible? Because here the electrical signal changes its polarity. At the same time, the membrane also changes its charges. So the overall, it remains the same. The negative of negative is positive. So negative of negative remains positive. That means, although the wave, the electrical signal, they change the direction, that would mean that the 2 wave should be negative. But at the same time, because the charges also changes their position, so overall the things remain the same. Right? So the 2 waves will be upright. That's the reason why, even though it's a ventricular repolarization, the depolarization and the repolarization waveforms are positive. Right? So this is how the waveforms are generated in the heart, how they are presented in the ECG, and what is the difference between depolarization and repolarization. Even though electrically they are opposite in direction, but in ECG we see it as a positive deflection. The reason is both charges and the electrical signal, both of them, they change their direction. Thank you very much.